curiosity, experimentation, and an unwavering self-belief. Always pushing the boundaries, always believing great can be greater. Since 1844, we have pioneered new ways of creating the extraordinary. The first bottles of Penfolds came from soil that had never grown grapes, and a doctor that had never made wine. The vision continued with a lineage of celebrated winemakers who pushed our development to new heights. Our wines are big and bold, made to be complex, made to be remarkable, made to live long. Our pioneering spirit and curiosity is what defines us. It is what drives us. It is what has helped us become one of the most celebrated winemakers in the world today.
Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Merci d'être parmi nous ce soir. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I must say that I'm very, very humbled and privileged to be hosting this wine tasting event, but I'll keep the surprise for later. And that video is the perfect presentation to make you imagine the vision of the renowned Penfold estate. First of all, let me present myself. My name is Karitha Pierre, and I'm from the SAQ Marketing Services here and Event Planning. And I worked here for a lot of years, even maybe, let's say 19 years. However, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about wines and what do you have in your glass. So as a friendly tip, before we begin, let's talk about the pacing of this event. Before every service, I will call out the bottle of wine that needs to be opened, so you'll have time to serve yourself your perfect glass of wine. And while you're watching this moment, don't hesitate. You could press pause if you missed that information and come back to that missed information at your own pace and enjoy every single minute of this tasting. And for all of the wines that are tasted today, they're all available individually on our site, saq.com. And if you like these kind of experience, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and just search for the SAQ, and we'll be there to share all of our experience with you in the safety of your own home. Well, now, without further ado, I'm here in the presence in the studio, live with the one and only chief winemaker of the Penfold estate, Mr. Peter Gago. Hello, Mr. Gago.
Hello, great to be here.
Thank you.
Very nice.
How are you doing?
Doing very, very well. Yeah, just literally sailed in this morning.
I heard through the grapevines that it took you a lot of time to reach Montreal soil.
Well, I've flown into Montreal before. I've been driven in before, but I've never sailed in a big ship, though, actually. There were 425 fellow guests.
Okay.
We left Manhattan quite a few days ago and via Halifax and berthed here this morning, and I'm amazed that we are here now because of the storm.
The storm. We had a huge storm last night, and you were here safely. That's amazing.
On time. Yes, yes.
And how was the weather coming here?
Variable, variable.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now I want to know a little bit, but we all want to know your story.
Right.
What gave you the passion for wine?
Well, I must admit for myself, it was more of an immersion than an epiphany.
Okay.
We call it the grip of the grape. You know, you start off trying things as a university student, and the trying becomes a little bit of a collection. The collection becomes a short course. The short course becomes a career. How did that happen? But a genuine love of wine. So I often say to people, you know, I'm a wine lover first, a wine collector second, and I happened many decades back to become a winemaker. So it's been a very natural progression. Not from a wine family. Mum and dad, you know, to this day will have a glass of wine, but it's not a big thing in their lives. For me, I guess you could almost say it's an obsession.
Yes, quietly, but it's a fantastic obsession,
It is,
and you work with it with perfection in the industry.
I'm very lucky, and at Penfolds we have a fantastic winemaking team.
Okay.
Hence, I can be here in this month of the year. It's not in our harvest. People say, shouldn't you be making wine? Well, yes, but in Australia, you know, between probably late January and May. Although, of course, nowadays we have, you know, endeavours going on in Bordeaux and also California. So there is that swap in the second half of the year. But with that lovely safety net called that lovely cultural winemaking team ethos, I can be out gallivanting at certain times of the year. That's what they say.
That's well said.
It's working.
That was so well said.
Yeah.
And okay, now we talked about your history. Now let's go towards Penfold. It's founded in 1844.
1844, you know, the colony of Adelaide started in 1836. Obviously, Indigenous settlement for tens of thousands of years prior, but white settlement in the colony of Adelaide, 1836. We talk New World. 8 years later, Penfold started. So our history is very much dovetailed into that of the state of South Australia. Nowadays, of course, we make wine not only in the state of South Australia, but we source fruit, and we'll be seeing it soon, from the island state of Tasmania, from the state of Victoria. There's a little bit of southern Victorian fruit in the first white wine. The Snowy Mountains, Tumbarumba in New South Wales. So we source from many states of Australia. And now we've jumped an ocean or two as well to make wine elsewhere as well. So, but with that Penfold stamp, this thing we call the house style of template, Penfold, a stylistic template.
And we're talking about all around the world. You tell me, you just told me a great news that you have a couple new members in the Penfold family.
Yes.
Where from?
Well, we have operations now occurring in France and also in California. We have a wonderful alliance with the great family of Tiernaud in Champagne. Now, Tiernaud as a champagne house only started in 1985, but they also have Canard Duchesne, they also have Joseph Perrier. And we created and launched only a couple of years ago at the Ritz in Paris, in the Place de la Vendôme, 3 wines at the time. A Blanc de Blanc from Aviz, Grand Cru single vineyard. A Blanc de Noir from AE, single vineyard. And a Chardonnay Pinot Chardonnay blend from right across the Champagne district. All from the 2012 harvest. And then only, not even within the last calendar year, a non-vintage rosé champagne. And that's with the House of Tiernaud. I work directly with Stanislas, with Nicolas, a lovely collaboration. And we can put Penfolds on the label of a champagne. The CIBC, the most regulatory of all regulating groups on planet Earth, quote unquote, we love what Penfolds and Tiernaud have done. They've done it right from the start.
That's amazing.
Champagne. If we move further afield in France, we've actually invested in our own wineries, now 4 in Bordeaux. We bought Cambon de la Pelouse, Chateau Gironville and Chateau Bellevue. And just recently, a major stake in Chateau Lanessan, which is right very close to Saint-Julien. So now the parent company of Penfolds Treasury Wine Estates has invested, and we have gone in to make wine there. Having done that, we have for many years,
which is a lot.
In 1988, we bought a half a share in a winery in Sonoma called Geyser Peak. We sent over a Penfold senior winemaker, he never came back. We sent over a Penfold red winemaker, he never came back. So now we insist when people go and work in California, they do come back to Penfolds. But we last year released a quartet of wines out of California. Top down, Quantum, a bin 149, a bin 704, and a bin 600. And we say in California as we do in France, Californian sun above and soil below, but everything in between is Penfolds. So we adopt all the Penfold techniques of fermentation, fruit sourcing, élevage. The whole thing is very much done through a Penfold lens. So it's really no different talking the history of Penfolds at our McGill Estate Winery, the original spiritual home. Dr. Christopher Rawson Penfold, our founder, and his wife Mary, had to leave the estate to get more fruit over the years. And we've really just extrapolated that into different states and now jumping an ocean or two.
Fantastic. And you're talking about Penfold's lens. And I want to know, through your lens when you had that first phone call in 1989
A while back.
to join Penfolds. What was your vision and how did you see it through your lens?
Certainly. Well, I do the sums, and that's like 33, and it's about a third of a century ago.
Yes.
I applied for an advertisement. I still have the original advertisement, the Adelaide Advertiser. I applied for a job as a sparkling winemaker at Penfolds, hence the later interest in champagne. There was always a later huge interest in champagne or Australian sparkling wines. So I did that for about 4 years and then moved into red winemaking in 1993. So that's, you know, almost 30 years ago into reds and predominantly stuck with the reds, but we have a terrific senior white winemaker, Kim Schroeder, and, you know, we talk a lot about the whites. Of course, we have red wines, we have fortifieds going back to the 1800s, and now we've left sparkling in Australia, but we've gone to champagne in France. So the lens I had back in '89 would not have anticipated much of that. But it was very much in my own cellar in the 70s, having left Melbourne University. In the early 80s, I bought Penfold red wines.
Wow.
I have a lot of wines in my cellar from a long time before joining
joining the team.
Oh,
so
yes.
It all came back
from the
full
1950s, from the 1960s, the 1970s. Not all of them, but many are still in. I have 2 cellars, but I loved Penfolds before I joined them. Yeah.
And you still have them in your cellar.
Oh, many of those wines still
That's
in.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Because Penfolds is renowned, especially with red winemaking, for that propensity to age, for the cellarability of our wines, for their longevity.
Exactly.
So, and always has had that reputation. Now, yes, we make other wines to have more accessibility in youth, but even our entry-level wines have that ability to age. We offer that lovely word called choice. Accessibility in youth or tick, tick, tick in a cellar.
That's amazing. That's what I always like sharing with people around me about Penfolds is that you could drink it now and have the beautiful, vibrant fruits and then keep it within the time and have it as a gift for your kids in the future. It's just it's beautiful.
And a lot of people say, oh, but nowadays people live in apartments and it's hard to have a cellar and all the rest.
True,
but there are cellaring facilities. There are wine cabinets now. It doesn't have to be a little space beneath your house. There are many ways of storing wine. And we do recorking clinics around the world, including here in Montreal with 2 historically. But when
can you explain, you're talking about that now, can you explain the recorking clinics? Yes, I'll explain
recorking clinics, but I guess the philosophy of they have wines to bring into the recorking clinics because they're cellaring wines. Here in Canada, we have conducted recorking clinics in Vancouver, many there, many in Toronto, here in Ottawa. So many recorking clinics, but that's something that Penfolds does, a very interactive process where people with any Penfold red wine, this isn't just Grange, any Penfold red wine that's 15 years or older, they can bring that red wine into a recorking clinic and have it assessed. Now, in conjunction with either Christie's or Sotheby's, depending upon what part of the world, or in Australia with Langton's, they will bring in 1 bottle or maybe 10 bottles or maybe 100 bottles and have them assessed. And after 31 years of recorking clinics, they're still free. It costs nothing.
And the clientele just has to register?
They have to register as if you were booking in to see your doctor. It's a recorking clinic.
Yeah.
And you'll book a 5-minute appointment or a 15-minute appointment, or depending upon the severity of how many bottles. Yes.
Okay,
indeed.
That's great.
Yeah.
And now we're back on track with it. When's the next one?
Post-COVID. Well, I've just not so long back completed our first clinic after COVID in Adelaide, a 3-day clinic. In November, we're doing 3 days in Sydney, 3 days in Melbourne, with up to 8 Penfold winemakers. This is after 30-odd years. The interest just gets bigger. When in Canada next? Well, this is where I'm going to talk to the SAQ. We're going to have some very interesting
to live that experience.
In Montreal. We would love to come back and do a 3rd recorking clinic here. You know, the emotion at these clinics, it's not just bringing in a red wine to have a new cork put into an old bottle. everyone who brings these bottles in, it's not a bottle, it's a story.
It's a story.
Where I bought it, how much I bought it for. And look, we have the odd ulterior motive though too, because some bottles really should be drunk. And the major objective of clinics is to encourage people to drink wine when it should be drunk.
Exactly.
You know, not after it's fallen off its perch. You know, all wines rise to a certain quality level. Lesser wines fall back quickly,
Exactly.
but great wines will plateau for many, many years, but they all ultimately go into a decline phase. We've found in the world of wine, a lot of people don't drink it on the ascent. A lot of people don't even drink it on the plateau. Everyone's trying to second guess that point, and most people get that point wrong.
Yeah.
And it varies from bottle to bottle and cellar to cellar. So these clinics are very educational as well. Our competitors love Penfold Recorking Clinics.
That's amazing.
We're educating, talking about cellarability, explaining that not all red wines get better with age.
And that's a great experience for the
Very
clients,
interactive.
yes.
And how to cellar wine, you know, and they're talking to a winemaker. So it's you know, other wineries have been known to recork, but you drop a bottle off, you bring it back, you know, you knock on a door, 2 days later you collect it.
Back.
Ours is interactive. You're actually pouring 15 ml or less, 2% or less of the volume of the bottle.
Okay.
And at the end of that, the owner gets to taste his or her bottle. So it's very
that's
interactive.
Lovely.
But if the wine isn't as it should be for that given vintage and bottle, we white dot it. Still gets a cork, but not a stamped and dated cork. It doesn't get a capsule. It won't be certified. Okay. So we're actually taking bad wines out of the system. We're improving the gene pool of what's left. But believe me, many people, when they leave with a white dot, they're very happy because, I can drink it now.
Yes.
You know, when we advise, drink it this weekend or last till Christmas or, you know, we've often joked, and we were talking about it at the session just prior to this, 2 classic quotes at Penfold Recorking Clinics. Doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire, a multi-millionaire, a mum or dad off the street, doesn't matter. You say to them, why haven't you opened that bottle yet? I can afford to buy it, but I can't afford to drink it. We get that around the world by wealthy people and others. But the second quote we're both guilty of, why haven't you opened that bottle yet? I'm waiting for the right occasion. And people hold on to these venerated bottles, oftentimes for too long.
I love the universe of wine, just to hear these kind of stories and the type of people you meet and their experience with a Penfold bottle. It's fantastic. It's really
Absolutely.
great. Yeah.
And it's such an experience. We find wines we didn't even know existed that aren't on
Exactly.
our, you know,
I could only
what
imagine.
comes out of the woodwork, literally, is quite astounding. And as I say, it's not just about Grange now, more expensive special bins or whatever. It can be Canunga Hill Shiraz Cabernet. It can be Bin 28, Bin 389, all the way through the portfolio. Well, even Bin 389, that goes back over 6 decades now.
Wow.
Sononry goes back to the 1800s, back to 1889. You know, like, wow.
Oh, yes.
So a lot of things come in.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Okay. Now we're at the moment that everybody's waiting for, the tasting.
The tasting.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will go with our first glass of wine, which is the Bin 311 Chardonnay 2020. First of all, I want to say salute.
Great to be here.
Cheers. Cheers to everybody at home.
Indeed.
Thank you for connecting with us. And now, can you talk about this lovely Chardonnay?
Indeed. The first thing I'll say about this wine is you look at the colour, and really, this is a barrel-fermented, oxidatively made Chardonnay. Yet it actually appears and looks like a Riesling, the colour of that. There are some green hues in that wine. Now, how do we do that? The wine is barrel-fermented, only in French oak. Here we're looking,
okay.
Yeah, not all new though. In this instance, for this vintage, 41% of this is new oak. Only barriques, 2 25-litre barrels. The fruit sourcing though is the magical thing here. 68% of this comes from the island state of Tasmania. A little bit comes from the Adelaide Hills, elevated vineyards in Piccadilly, and a tiny bit comes from southern Victoria. Now, you go any further south, you bump into Tasmania and then Antarctica. So we're going south, cooler climates.
Yes.
What we're seeking here is Chardonnay fruit just on the cusp of physiological ripening. And at a bin level, this gives us tightness, it gives us linearity, it gives us definition. And that's what we're tasting here. We're not tasting a big, luggy, alcoholic, over-the-top, trying too hard Chardonnay. This has lovely definition.
Peach, green apples on the nose, freshness.
We've often said with these styles, we're not trying to create just a Chardonnay-flavoured white wine. We want those complexities that you've referred to.
Yes.
A little bit of Lees influence. You know, that wine sits on Lees in barrique until just prior to bottling. Like with the champagne, these grapes aren't crushed. They're very gently pressed.
Okay.
And the great thing about Bin 311 is it gets relegated fruit from wines above it.
Okay.
In the early days, Bin 311 as a style could only come from one single region, cool climate. It never got to see any new oak. It almost had like a Chablis type template.
And when was this?
Only just a few years ago.
Okay.
We just recently changed this.
Okay.
So now this can get relegated Utana fruit. It sort of is to white wine 311 what our Bin 389 is to Grange. We call Bin 389 Baby Grange. We're now calling this Baby Utana.
Okay.
So the smart money, saves up for a bottle of Utana, our flagship.
Yes.
But looks at 311 because it's getting fruit that just didn't quite get there out of Utana, or for that matter, our reserve Bin Chardonnay from the Adelaide Hills.
It's beautifully structured. We're talking right now, and I still feel the presence of the wine. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, lovely natural acidity.
Yeah.
The oak isn't overplayed, it's part of the wine. The barrel fermentation integrates fruit and oak.
And it's not extremely buttery, so it's well balanced.
Not
what
high
would be
enough.
the perfect pairing for you? At home, with the family? What would you...
Look, it's quite remarkable. This is almost a standalone. Should you not want to have any
beautiful
food,
aperitif.
you can do that, or with food. I tend to go for seafoody dishes, especially in this part of the world.
Yes.
You know, beautiful scallops, some
works here.
lobster, some crayfish, some delicate seafoods, or some lighter cheeses. Really, gone are the days too. White wine with fish, and red wine with meats. I tend to think with the food and wine pairings, it's more the accompaniment, the jus, the gravy, the adornments that can interfere. But this goes with so many different cuisines.
Like we say in French, it's a great passe partout. You could really mix and match any kind of food, and it's a perfect match because it's so well balanced.
Oh, yes,
I really
yes.
love it. It's great.
Yeah.
But now you spoke about the iconic bottle of the Grange.
Oh,
What
yes.
is the history behind that beautiful bottle?
Grange. Well, we've just celebrated the 70th, 70, anniversary of Grange, and it's been made without interruption across each and every year. We have with our flagship Cabernet Sauvignon, Bin 707, the odd miss with 707, because Cabernet Sauvignon ripens later. Phenologically, it's a lot riskier. But with Syrah, with what we call Shiraz and Grange, less risk. It ripens earlier. It's ideally suited to the landscape, to the soils, to the climate of South Australia. And let's not forget, South Australia is the driest state in the world's driest continent. We have a winter-dominant rainfall, conditions ideally suited to growing grapes.
Yes.
With Grange, we're also able to avail very old vines, oftentimes well over a century old. But it's not just about old vines. Who cares how old a vine is if it's in the wrong soil or in the wrong year, or it doesn't matter how old. And old vines make great wine, not because they're old, but because they're good. That's why they're old. They're still there.
Yeah, and they're nice and healthy.
Yeah, and old vines self-regulate. They naturally have a slightly lower yield, so physiologically they ripen earlier and you pick them earlier. Before, the dark clouds move in, or a bit of inclement weather or storm, or in this day and age, even fires. You've had fires recently in Canada.
Yeah.
California in 2017 and 20. It's an issue. So Shiraz and Grange, that's what we use as the raw material. Having said that, though, there have only been 7 vintages of Grange that have been 100% Syrah, 100% Shiraz.
Okay.
The 51, the 52, the 63, the 99, the 2000, And recently the 11, and last year's release the 17. So only 7 vintages out of 70 have been 100% Shiraz. There's usually a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon in there as well. Why do we put it in?
Well, that's just me trying to...
No, it varies year to year. The great thing about Grange is the way in which we make it.
Okay.
Obviously, it starts in the vineyard, and then we sort and keep things separate. We make calls at the fermenter of whether we take it off skins early and complete the fermentation off skins in barrel. That's financially quite risky. In terms of production, it's the last thing you want to do because there's so much going on. The last thing you want to be doing is finishing off your ferment in barrels. But you start off with that much as contenders. At the ferment, you end up with that much. Then after harvest, we have what we call classification tastings.
Okay.
And in those tastings, all the sample bottles come in of different barrels, different tanks, contenders to taste. There might be scores and scores and scores of barrels. I often joke I'm a little bit of a cheat at a blind tasting. I don't know I'm cheating. I'm listening to what's going on. I'm looking at capsule colours. You cannot cheat in a classification tasting. All the bottles are coded. So we organoleptically assess what's in those bottles. Sight, smell, taste. And we choose what goes into Grange based on style and quality. By doing it blind, it takes out the emotional biases, it takes out the financial biases. So you start in the vineyard with this, at the fermenter with that, classification that, then at the end of classification, that many wines left for the Grange blend.
Who's the team during the
Penfold winemaking team.
Got it.
And we talk about, in our winemaking system is based on mentorship. The younger winemakers listen to what the older ones, and we'll have people like John Bird quite often join us. John now is in his late 70s. He worked with the great Max Schubert. You know, to have that sort of resource, and that sort of mentorship is amazing for the younger ones.
Of course.
But we select what goes into Grange purely on style and quality, without that emotional, without that financial bias. Now,
all blind tasting.
All blind. Now, I'm not saying that's the way to make red wine or to assemble a blend, but we've been doing it now for over 70 years, and it works with that style. Yeah. That's why the volume of Grange varies year to year.
Okay.
And that's why the varietal split varies year to year. Because in those bottles, you don't know vineyard, you don't know volume, and you don't know variety. They're just Grange-like type contenders.
Okay.
And after that classification tasting, we put the blend together of Grange, and it matures synergistically in barrel as a blend. We say it's a no guts, no glory approach to blend. You can't unscramble the eggs after you put that blend
no
together.
Glory. That's what you have like
That's
the perfect phrase to describe the wines. I love it. And now we're talking about red wine. So for all of the red wine lovers, let's open our second bottle of wine. So we'll continue with the Bin 407. We're in the vintage 2019 Cabernet Sauvignon. What is your input for this cab?
Well, this is a relatively newcomer to the Penfold portfolio. When I say that, look, it goes back to 1990, and I've got to do the arithmetic, because 1990 to me was 4 days ago, but
same.
32 years back. I can remember the shirt I was wearing during harvest, but 1990 was the first Bin 407, and we've made it every year since.
Okay.
It's 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. We use a combination of French oak barrels and American oak barrels.
Okay.
But these are not the barriques of the Chardonnay 225 litres. We call them hogsheads, 300 litre barrels. And there's a little bit of new oak and a little bit of older oak each year. But the important thing is a combination of French oak barrels and American oak barrels for this 407 style. Now, when I refer to the 407 style, I'm not talking about a formula. None of our wines are made to formula. They're made to stylistic templates. So no two Bin 407s are the same, because vintage to vintage variation, climatically, no two harvests are the same. But it's always of this style, give or take a little bit of latitude. But this is varietally expressive. You smell this and straight away, it's Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes, it is.
It's very varietally expressive.
I have like a little hint of, well, this is because I'm here in Quebec and Montreal, but of a hint of wet leaves.
Yes, yes.
It's lovely. It's
yeah. There's a
peppery, a
little bit of tomato leaf, but not too
yes,
much.
a little hint.
A little bit, you know, people talk about blackcurrant, cassis, and all those standard descriptors, but
Yeah.
I'm getting other things there as well. I'm getting a little bit of delicate mint. I'm getting a little bit of almost like Satsuma plum. And I'm smelling Penfolds too. You know, this is a Penfold red wine, but definitively it's varietally, truly 100% Cabernet. Yeah.
It's simply lovely.
You know, and I say that deliberately too, in contrast with, say, our flagship Cabernet, which has been 707. Bin 407 is, I am a Cabernet. It shouts it. Whereas 707 says, I'm 707. Paragraph 3, oh, by the way, I'm a Cabernet Sauvignon. It's such a definitive style, Bin 707, as Grange is for Shiraz. They are so, and we don't enter them in wine shows because who judges in wine shows? Other winemakers and people who definitively know those styles very well.
Got it, okay.
But 407, since day one, I'm a Cabernet, I'm proud of it. In this instance, there's a lot of fruit from Pathaway, down in the southeast part of South Australia. But there's also fruit from Coonawarra, Rattenbully, areas down the south, and a little bit of warmer climate Barossa and McLaren Vale fruit as well. So this truly is a multi-regional blend made to, if I can use the term, the house style of Bin 407. We have many ingredients across many Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards.
Yes.
Many, many different soil types. People might say, but it's just academic. Why 100% Cabernet? You know, Cabernet historically, we've heard about the donut effect. It's not just a structural donut effect, quite often a flavour one as well. We'll fill that mid-palate with Cabernet Sauvignon from different soil types, different vineyards to mould that blend and create that blend of 407. 100% Cabernet.
Beautifully made. And we were talking later about Penfolds, how it's the signature of the estate of aging its wines. Can we just keep this segue and talk about this lovely book that we have here in front of us?
Yes, yes. Well, this is called The Rewards of Patience. But if you look closely, Caritha, edition 8. I feel old when I look at edition 8.
No, you're not. No,
you know,
you're not.
I can remember edition 7, edition 6, edition 5, edition 4.
Yes.
But every 4 to 5 years, we completely reassess all of the wines in our museum. Now, when I say we, us winemakers are off to one side. We bring in an international panel of judges. From this country, Canada, you know, Tony Gismondi has been historically. But judges from around the world, we open up our museum cellar to a completely independent assessment of all of our wines. As I say, the good, the bad, and the ugly of vintages. And they will offer drinking windows on all of these wines.
You said that you do that how many times?
About every 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
We have been caught out a little bit with COVID, obviously, everyone has. But wines change over that period. And the remarkable thing that I love about the wines that we have in cellars, there are no absolutes in wines. We're wrong most of the time. And sometimes you might write off a wine, but it's just going through a bit of a trough and then it comes out of it. So it's interesting looking through the different editions and how a wine has been assessed over the decades.
Got it. And where can we get this book?
This is available here in Montreal. I'm sure the SAQ will have access. It's a great reference. You know, some people have all 8 editions. They collect them like a wine collection.
Of course.
And it is good. My favourite edition is edition 7. It's quite a thick edition. And that goes back through the history of Penfolds. There's a lot more. This one, not as much history, but the descriptions of the wines is quite exact.
Got it, okay.
Yeah. And we should remember too, drinking windows are only guesstimates, best guesses of how long the wine will be optimally drinking for. And as we know, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. So that's why we redo this book every few years.
Okay, got it. And now let's go towards what's on everybody's lips nowadays, climate change and sustainability. And we would like to know, what is the vision of Penfolds and what is the impact that Penfolds want to leave on planet Earth?
Yes, yes. Sustainability is everything. In a viticultural sense, we're doing all sorts of things with recycled water, with mulch in vineyards, canopy management or whatever.
Yes.
But there are certain things we can't control yet. And I sort of say with climate change, we've been dealing with this at Penfolds for about 178 years. And by that I mean, and I'm not trying to be a bit smart here as such, but in a warm year in South Australia, we've gone south to cooler regions. In a cool year, we go to the northern vineyards for certain multi-regional styles. So I often joke we bend our knees, but we keep our back straight with regard to sourcing for those styles of wines where we can blend from different vineyards. So for example, at Penfolds, we make, in effect, 3 styles of wine, single vineyard wines, reflecting terroir, sense of place. At McGill Estate Shiraz, single vineyard is a good example of that, or Block 42. We love that, a single vineyard style. A single region style, like our Bin 128 Shiraz, can only come from Coonawarra. Our Reserve Bin Chardonnay can only come from the Adelaide Hills, from vineyards in very, immediate viticultural access within one viticultural area. That's a second style. But our third style of wine we're better known for, our multi-regional blends, where we put blends together to honour a certain style, a house style. So the house style of Grange, or the house style of Sononry, or the house style of Bin 407. Because we're blending across the regions with climate changing every year, we can shop around for fruit that best expresses that. So we're lucky in that regard. Now, we've actually now got a 4th style of wine. We're now jumping oceans and we're going to California, we're going to Bordeaux to minimise risk, to spread risk, until globally we correct these things. But climate change, as we know, isn't necessarily about global warming per se. It's all the years, all the extremes. It's hotter, it's colder, it's windier, it's rainier, it's hailier. So we sort of have a lot of flexibility with regard to sourcing. But from a sustainability perspective, whether it's in our packaging centres, whether it's in our wineries or in our vineyards, very, very conscious to help. But the big picture is an issue. Is an issue.
And my next question, because the wine world is so fantastic, and maybe we have some participants with us that have been drinking Penfolds since forever, and we have some people that just discovered Penfolds. So the little question that I have is, what is the mention of bin on every single bottle?
Yes, the term bin at Penfolds has a direct historical connection.
Okay.
At our spiritual home of McGill, which is, should people visit it, they fly into the city of Adelaide, at the CBD, the original Penfold winery, which is still a working winery in McGill Estate, is only 15 minutes by cab out of the city centre.
Wow.
It's amazing. But when you visit that McGill winery, beneath the winery are what we call underground drives, like in Champagne, and at the end of them are vaults or compartments. We call them bins. In the 1800s, before air conditioning, before refrigeration, then, like now, we would bottle wine, but we wouldn't sell it the next day. So those bottled wines were binned. They were put into different vaults, different compartments, different bins. Different bins had different numbers beneath the winery. More or less like the Champenois, but for different reasons. And this reason is to keep, bottles at a steady temperature and a lower temperature. Different bins, different numbers. Nowadays, of course, it's a marketing term.
Yeah.
So, but bin 389, first vintage 1960, is made to that style every year. Bin 28, Shiraz, first vintage 1959, made to that bin 28 style every year. I often joke, some wines don't have bin numbers, like Sononry, Grange, although Grange, if you look closely, bin 95. Our flagship Yattarna, an indigenous word meaning little by little or gradually.
Yes.
But if you look closely at a label of Yattarna, it's bin 144. There were 144 trials before the completion and blending of the first wine of Yattarna, 1995, released in the year 1998. it's still bin 144. But I joke, you know, if you have children, you might have a boy or a girl, you don't quite know yet. You've got 3 names ready to go if it's a boy, 3 names ready to go if it's a girl. We have over 50 children. Bin numbers come in very useful.
That's so true. That's a lot of kids for 50
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
a
look,
lot.
and it's helped us in non-English speaking countries, like in China. Oh, they like bin 28, bin 28, bin 389. You know, the numbers mean something.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
especially in China,
and
numbers
in other
is very important for
countries
them.
with words, yatana is a difficult word. It's indigenous, you know, sonnerie, Grange even for some people is, but bin 95, you know.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're talking about a certain product because some participants, yes, they bought the whole set for this tasting. However, we saw that some members also bought these products that are also available at saq.com. And if you just give us a little bit of your input. So we have the Penfold Chardonnay Yatarna 2019, the Shiraz Bin 798 2019, and the Bin 600 Cab Shiraz 2018. And can you give us a little bit
sure.
of your...
Well, I might start with bin 704, which we actually have.
Of course,
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
This
We'll
is-
serve this glass, the last one,
Yes,
of course.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not the least.
No,
it's not
no,
the
no,
least.
no.
So yes, we'll start with
So
this one.
yeah, so bin 704, and we'll talk about bin 600 as being a pigeon pair almost.
And we're in California.
Yeah, from California. So this material comes from the Napa Valley, from our vineyards over there. And I say our, we're part of a larger group, Treasury Wine Estates, who has lovely vineyards right across the Napa, whether it be up in Howell Mountain, Spring Mountain, Oakville, Rutherford, you know, many, many great vineyards with mature fruit. So we go into our colleagues and we say, can we have that row there? Can we have that block there? Can we have that part vineyard there? And that's what goes into these wines. We're very, very lucky.
Yes.
But 704, you could say, is a hemispherical mirror image of bin 407. It's inverted,
Okay.
704, 407.
Yeah.
And it's made to the style of 407, albeit in French oak, about 80% is new.
Okay.
Sorry, about 40%. I'm getting it mixed up with another
Is
wine.
new.
Yeah, 40% new French oak.
Okay.
But again, varietally expressive. It's not Australian. It's very Penfolds.
Yes, it is.
It's Californian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, we don't have that super jammy kind of style.
Jammy.
So it's typical Penfolds. You smell it right away.
Structurally, the
Yes.
acidity going through it, not over oaked, that lovely grip, that lovely structure, that mid-palate richness without globbiness, without alcohol, without trying too hard. So Californian fruit, Penfolds winemaking.
Yeah.
So, you know, fermenters where I'll use a term, rack and return, draw the wine off, go back in over. Lots of Penfold techniques used in a Californian setting.
Thank you. Thank you for
it's
that.
704.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's fantastic. And
Yeah.
what would be your perfect pairing for this one?
Oh, with this, I must admit, I go back to the Osso Bucco, the richer
Oh,
dishes,
yes.
and I'm a bit of a carnivore, so...
It's okay. And this is the
yeah.
typical season for us here
Yes,
in Montreal.
yes,
It's getting
yeah.
kind of nippy, so it's the perfect wine
game
for us.
food, you know,
Yeah.
some lots, and this just cuts right through that.
Got it.
But you mentioned the other one, bin
Yep.
600 is a stablemate. But bin 600, many years ago when we did establish our presence in California,
Yes.
a few years later in 1997, we bought 610 acres. We bought the Creston 600 Ranch, not far from Paso Robles. Kamata Hills is what we call the property.
Yeah.
And we planted some Syrah, some Shiraz there in 98, 99, with cuttings from our Kalimna vineyard in South Australia and our McGill Estate vineyard.
Okay.
They were planted in the late 90s. We have a block 30 there, and we have other Shiraz fruit there as well. So in bin 600, we're using the Shiraz from Kamata Hills combined with Napa Cabernet to form the quintessential Australian red blend, the Penfold blend of Cabernet and Shiraz.
Okay. Got
For
it.
bin
Yeah.
600.
Yes.
So think of Canunga Hill Shiraz Cabernet or bin 389 Cabernet Shiraz out of California now from 2 regions, Cabernet and Shiraz coming
Married
together.
together.
Yep.
That's
yep,
fantastic.
Yep.
Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you enjoyed your last glass of wine, because now here we are, sadly at an end. However, I want to personally thank everybody that's here with us and connecting with us during this wine tasting event. I want to thank the whole team behind the cameras, and especially to you, Mr. Gago. Thank you for your time and for sharing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your great questions, your love and interest in these wines.
I do,
and
thank you.
the SAQ support of the wines of Penfolds. We really do appreciate it. And I must admit, when I come to Montreal and I see a bottle of Penfolds on a restaurant table, it feels so good. So thank you to the SAQ.
It fills you up with joy.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, everybody back home, you enjoyed this soiree. And salute to everybody. And feel free, once again, to follow us for more experience like this on our YouTube channel. And just tap in SAQ. And Mr. Gago, have a safe drive, flight,
I fly out, home. Yeah, in by water, out by air.
There you go. Be safe.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.